any of the factors that contribute to successful outcomes were absent. So, big surprise. If anything, if anybody had cared, and here this is back to state leadership, if governments had really cared, they would have delayed the conference. Why stick to this ritual of 10-year birthdays of Stockholm, postpone it for a couple of years till the political atmospherics were better, but they didn't even care that much. What does it mean for the future of international environmental politics? To a large extent, what I've been arguing is that it confirms our understanding of what drives international environmental politics. None of the factors that make a difference were present. But there are two factors that I think require a little more attention. One is that this is a limiting case for the role of norms in international environmental politics. If, there's the argument that we've been building environmental norms for 40 years, and that there is this emergent set of shared norms about the desire to protect the environment, maybe even to promote sustainable development. Well, didn't appear to make a whole lot of difference. Show me some evidence that norms made a difference for this outcome. Someone commented with regards to the sustainable development norm that, quote, 20 years after Rio, we're still struggling to define sustainable development. In the Oxford Handbook of International Environmental Law, there's a piece on norms in international environmental law. And the author sort of goes through the litany of norms that various activists and lawyers invoke as being potential norms. Presumably these are things that are shared enough that they get invoked to justify and drive collective action. Well, there's sort of two points about that. One is that a simple list of potential environmental norms includes at least 11 of these things. And second, all 11 of them are pretty contested. None of them are widely shared. So I'm afraid that Rio Plus 20 leads us to question the depth and utility of studying or applying environmental norms at the global level. You can think that Rio Plus 20 in the real world was a stress test for environmental governance. And it failed. Last point. And having sort of given this depressing talk about the conference and the state of international environmental politics, there's one interesting potential coming out of the conference. And this is a question that one of the interesting aspects of Rio Plus 20 was the wide number and array of civil society events that were held in the shadows of the governmental negotiations. Something like 3,000 events over a 2-week period. So this harkens back to the earlier question of what are the measures of a successful conference? What are we looking for? One of the things besides agenda setting is coalition building and constituency development. So the civil society events provide at least the promise of building or reinforcing a broader civil society transnational network around sustainable development. But it's a question. Nobody has any idea as to whether or not any kind of community formation occurred or not. Now, this is a great dissertation topic for anybody out there looking at this, is we've had, again, 40 years of civil society events. And the question is, has it mattered? Has a kernel of civil society community emerged from all of these events or not? And just sort of, we could imagine 3 possible effects of all of these civil society events. And to be honest, I have no idea which of those is true. The first is that what's going on is just sort of a cycling of interested groups, so that at each of these meetings you get a new set of people in the audience. So, it's the equivalent of offering an undergraduate lecture class. Each time you offer it, you have hundreds of people in the audience, but each time they're new. So there's no cumulative effect. The second model is you're teaching a graduate seminar to a bunch of acolytes, and what you have is the same people in the audience every time you offer it. And we've all seen that. Everybody she knows one another. They all greet one another by their first names. But there isn't anything cumulative. And then the third is the more interesting deliberative model of gradually including more people over time who are engaging in a deliberative experience of sharing views, understanding differences, and developing consensus. Right? So Frank, we can think about a series of Earth System governance conferences, and what you do is you look at the years of mugs that people have. And so what you want is to find people who've got collections across many years rather than just one-offs. Okay.
Thank you, Peter. A bit long, but I think quite interesting. Very good points.
Thank you, Steiner. I agree with Frank that Hakone in the fall of 2011 was a good event. And the notion of a think factory was, I think, really quite interesting as a sort of generative process. I'm feeling very different from Peter, who started out saying he was feeling old and grumpy. I'm feeling young and radical. I agree with Steiner that Rio Plus 20 was a failure, but I'm not among those who think that there's no future in conference diplomacy. So why was Rio Plus 20 a failure? I think it's not just because the outcome document, the world we want, is largely a rhetorical document with, as Peter pointed out, remarkably little substance, even with respect to specific points, and generally kind of passing on things that were already under discussion. But I think there's a deeper reason why Rio Plus 20 was a failure. And it seems to me that that is because they basically got the agenda backward. So if you distinguish among 3 things, first,